The wind howled across the open plains like a dying beast, cutting through layers of leather and wool as the snow drove down in blinding sheets. It was one of them high-country blizzards that came without warning, the kind that could swallow a man whole before he even knew he was lost. Jed Carter hunched over the neck of his chestnut gelding, the reins stiff and icy in his hands. The horse's breath came out in thick white plumes, its flanks slick with frost. Jed wasn't one for riding in weather like this, but the storm had caught him halfway between the mining town of Silver Creek and his shack down by the San Pedro Valley. He'd figured he could make it home before nightfall. He'd figured wrong. As he squinted through the flurry, something dark flickered ahead, low against the snow, moving just enough to catch his eye. Jed tugged his horse to a stop and leaned forward. There it was again, a shape sprawled half-buried near a broken fence post. "Easy, boy," he muttered, swinging down from the saddle. The wind near tore the hat off his head. He trudged through knee-deep snow and knelt beside the figure. It was a woman. Her face was pale as ghostlight, lips blue from the cold, long hair matted with snow. She wore a fine wool coat, not the kind of thing a trail hand would own, and her gloved fingers were clenched round the handle of a small satchel. "Ma'am," Jed said, rough voice nearly lost to the wind. "Can ya hear me?" No answer, just a faint stir of breath. He worked fast, rolling her onto his blanket, wrapping her tight, then hoisted her up onto his horse like she weighed nothing. He mounted behind, holding her steady as he turned the horse toward the shadowy line of hills. He knew of an old trapper's cabin not far from here, a half-day's ride in good weather, but he didn't have much choice. Hours later, after the cold had near froze the blood in his veins, Jed finally pushed open the warped door of the shack. Snow followed him in like it had a mind to stay. He laid the woman by the fire pit and struck a match, coaxing life into the old logs till the flames licked high. When he peeled the ice off her gloves and hat, he caught sight of a small gold pin on her collar, shaped like a running horse. Expensive. Maybe family crest, maybe just fancy jewelry. Either way, this lady wasn't just anyone. He rubbed her hands and fed her a little whiskey from his flask. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered. She looked up, confused at first, then wary. Where am I?" she whispered. "Cabin. About 10 miles east of Silver Creek," Jed said, pulling his coat tighter. "Found ya near froze to death. You remember what happened?" She blinked slow. "My horse," he bolted. "I was headed to Ridge Pass. Got turned around." Jed nodded. "You're lucky I came along. Storm like this, most wouldn't have made it till dawn." She looked at him then, really looked. The flicker of the fire showed the man's rough jawline, his weather-bitten skin, the quiet steadiness in his eyes. He wasn't young, maybe 35, with the kind of calm that only came from too many lonely winters. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." "Jed Carter. She hesitated a moment, like the name weighed heavy on her tongue. "Eleanor Marsh." Jed nodded, set a pot of coffee on the coals. "Well, Miss Marsh, you just sit tight. Storm'll pass by mornin', then I'll see you safe back to town." She gave a faint smile. "You saved my life, Mr. Carter. I won't forget that." They passed the night in near silence, the wind scratching at the shutters like some restless spirit. When dawn came, the storm was done, blue sky stretching wide over a world turned white. Jed saddled up and helped Eleanor mount, her cheeks red from the cold but her eyes sharp and bright. She sat her horse like she'd been born in a saddle. "You ride well," he said, half surprised. She grinned faintly. "I've had practice." They rode through the quiet hills till the land opened up into a wide valley. And there, gleaming in the morning sun, stood the biggest ranch house Jed had ever seen. White fences running for miles, barns like small fortresses, cattle lowing in the distance. Eleanor slowed her horse. "This is home," she said softly. Jed blinked. "Home? You mean, I own it," she said, turning to him with a small smile. "Marsh River Ranch. My father built it before he passed." Jed just stared, feeling about as out of place as a coyote in church. He looked down at his dust-stained coat, the patched gloves, the horse that had seen better days. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "Didn't figure I was reskin' a ranch boss." Eleanor dismounted and stepped close, snow crunching under her boots. "Seems we both learned something today, Mr. Carter." "Yeah, that sometimes the person you least expect is the one who saves you." Before Jed could answer, a pair of ranch hands came riding up, calling out her name. They near fell off their saddles seeing her alive. Jed tipped his hat and turned to leave. "Hold on," she said. "You're not riding off just like that." He shrugged. "Don't reckon I belong here. You're safe now. That's what matters." Eleanor studied him, then said, "You any good with horses?" Jed gave a small grin. "I can handle a rope." "Good. I'm short a foreman since my last one ran off to Nevada." "You want a job?" He looked up at that grand house again, then at her, wind-tangled hair, frost still on her lashes, eyes like a mountain lake. "Don't rightly know if I'm the type to work for a lady," he said. She smiled slow. "Then don't work for me. Work with me." He chuckled low in his throat. "You're something else, Miss Marsh." "That's what they tell me," she said, mounting up again. "Come on, Mr. Carter. Let's get you settled in before the next storm finds you." And so he followed her, still half thinking he'd dreamed the whole thing. But as the sun climbed over the hills and lit up the snow like diamonds, Jed Carter knew that day had changed the course of his life. Weeks passed. Jed took to ranch work like he'd been born to it. He fixed fences, broke horses, and earned the respect of every hand on the place. Eleanor was out there most mornings herself, riding beside him, her laughter carrying over the fields like the ring of silver bells. They didn't talk much about that night in the storm, but it stayed between them, quiet and strong. One evening, near sunset, Jed found her out by the corral, watching the sky blaze gold. He leaned on the fence beside her. "Guess that blizzard turned out to be a blessing," he said softly. She smiled. "In more ways than one." The wind blew gentle through the grass, and for the first time in years, Jed Carter felt like he'd found a place that wasn't just a stop along the trail, it was home. The prairie stretched wide and endless, but he didn't feel lonely no more. Not with her standing beside him, eyes full of fire and the promise of something new. Maybe fate had its own way of working things out, Jed reckoned. Sometimes a man didn't need to go looking for purpose, it just rode out of the storm, half frozen and beautiful, and asked for his help. And from that day on, the cowboy who'd once wandered the plains alone found his reason to stay, right there on the largest ranch in the territory, with the woman whose life he'd saved, and who, in turn, had saved his own.